Welcome to Survive Today. We're continuing our series of interviews on authors who've written books on survival. Today we have Gary Yantis. He's written a book called Infinite Dangers, The Family Survival Guide of the 21st Century Dangers. And Gary has a extensive background in electrical engineering, and he's worked for the government. He's got quite a history behind him. And the first time that I heard Gary was SGT Bull was doing an interview with him on silver. And so we thought we'd get him on the program and have him tell us a little bit about his book and just his general philosophy on survival. Gary, welcome to the program.
Very happy to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and we'll try to cover as much as we can.
Great. That sounds awesome.
51 years ago, when I got my ham license, it was an oral, it was a written test, it was difficult. Today, it's a checklist. People have been known to just go in and randomly do check marks, and they pass. So it's really changed.
Yeah, like everything else, right? It gets dummied down, and we're only cheating ourselves in the long run. That's
true. I basically my background is as an electronics engineer. And in school in the 60s, when everybody else was going the digital route, because that was the new thing, me being a ham radio operator, I was RF, EMP, EMI, anything to do with UHF, VHF. Some of those terms mean things to some of your listeners and some don't, but basically things to do with radio. And out of my graduating class of 500, I think I was just about the only one that did a final paper that had anything to do that wasn't digital. And my instructor, I remember, really thanked me for that. He said, "I'm getting so tired of listening or reading T squared L, R, all these digital terms." And he said, I came out of the world that you're into right now. I really enjoyed you writing a 500-page dissertation on the history and capabilities of coaxial cable. I mean, that is to most people that could be just about as boring as watching paint dry. But I studied that I did a paper on it for like 12 weeks, went to different libraries, wrote the paper, got an A+ on it, and when I got out of school, the Atomic Energy Commission, now called ERDA, they had just discovered that EMP, which stands for electromagnetic pulse, basically a spark, that if it's strong enough can burn out transistors and really do a lot of great damage. They discovered that they couldn't find any engineers to hire that knew anything about it. So I was told that I was not going to accept any other job offers, that I was going to go to work for the AEC, which I did for a couple of years. And I was very humbled to be working for some famous PhDs in the AEC, Sandia Labs, Lawrence Livermore Labs, so forth. But me, being a 24-year-old kid, I was the go-to guy for EMP, which is really odd.
Well, that's a very interesting topic, and I know that although there's been a lot of advances in digital and it's kind of enabled a lot of our internet technology, I know that the government has not abandoned it, and there's a lot of talk around some of the activities up in Alaska. And I know I read some books on Tesla, and he did some work with extremely low frequency, and there's just a wealth of information out there that kind of a world to be explored that is other than digital, and seems like that's not the focus though. But
it is not new technology. Tesla burned out the power grid system of Colorado Springs in 1899, was run out of town, and they burned his lab down to the ground, including all of his papers. Probably set technology of the world back 50 years by doing that. So it's a technology that is old, that is reliable, that's easy, and for whatever reason, even government engineers still think that EMP is a byproduct of nuclear weapons. Furthest from the truth. Nuclear weapons can cause EMP, but that's not the easiest way to make it. It's so easy to make, and the products that you need need to make it are readily available for a few $1,000,000. I live in a Midwest city. For a few $1,000,000 and half a dozen engineers helping me and so forth, I'm not going to do it, but I could pretty much shut down the city. I could burn out every transistor, every integrated circuit within 40 miles. As far as I'm concerned, EMP and cyber attack is going to be if we have an outside enemy, that's what they're going to go after. It's going to be a combination of cyber attack and EMP. By the way, my book, Infinite Dangers, which is plural, it's a corporation, Infinite Dangers, Inc. I've got a website. It's www.infinitedangersplural.com. If you go to that website, click on the image of the book, up comes a box that says save or run. If you click to run, if you want, you can do that right now and follow along with me, because it'll pop right up on your screen and the book will be right there. I got delayed due to, well, you were talking about medical problems. I had medical problems. I've been fighting Lyme disease for years, and by the way, if anyone out there listening is fighting that or thinks they might be fighting it, get in touch with me, and I may be able to help you out a lot. But that's a totally different subject.
Yeah, I don't agree with everything that Jesse Ventura does. I think a lot of times he can be very sensational, but I do respect some of the things he's doing lately with standing up to the TSA. And he did a show once on that island across from New Jersey where they believe Lyme disease started.
Yep, I read all about that.
Yeah, and it's a darn shame when you consider that these things go on. And I guess if the people knew half of what was going on, they would be up in arms. But it seems like as long as we've got television and beer in the fridge, we're happy to just go along and just keep the system running.
When I was working for the AEC, I had a high up tell me confidentially. He said, as high up as I am in the government, in the permanent secret government, and there is, because I was a part of it. At the time, I thought it was good. I thought it was patriotic. Well, I was 24 years old as well. He told me, he said, even as high up as I am, I don't know 1% of what's going on. No one person does.
Are you talking about the continuity of government that Ronald Reagan had said about?
That he gave his parting speech was, be careful. In fact, that speech has been replayed 3 or 4 times for whatever reason in the last few days. But yes, very much so.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the reasoning behind going down that path, but I could also see some huge problems with it, because if you had a shadow government, who's to say that that government couldn't stand up and replace the other one even before there was an emergency? There's just a ton of reasons why that could be a bad thing. Oh, well, could you explain a little bit about where you're at with respect to the country today and what you're doing to prepare?
I have a website, and I started it a long time ago. I'm migrating it over to Infinite Dangers as the name of it, but right now I'm still using my ham radio call letters, which is W0TM, not O, not the letter O, but W0TM. If you go to YouTube, just put in W0TM, and up pops about 30-some videos. Talk about some pretty boring stuff. I'm kind of heavy duty into silver as investing. By the way, I don't keep any silver here in the house. I'm not that dumb. But I've been investing in silver since 1989, when I discovered by my engineering that we were flat running out and the world was going to be needing a huge amount of extra silver, and it wasn't there. So I started investing silver in 1989, and it's worked out pretty well.
You know, I've looked at that a little bit myself, and I've seen that silver is a very unique, not only precious metal, but also industrial metal. And one of the things that I keep running up against is the idea that, you know, if we've got J.P. Morgan and the powers that be suppressing the price of silver, and I've read a little bit of this book. I don't know if you've seen this, The Silver Stealers by Savoy. You know, there's just a long list of Pilgrim Society, and they go into what some might consider conspiracy theory, but he really makes a strong case that the powers that be have been trying to control and get us towards a one-world monetary system, and they've done so in various ways, one of which was dumping silver onto the market from India in the past, and really just decimating people's personal wealth. My question is, what's to prevent them in their shenanigans from really decimating anyone who's holding silver today?
Long term, I have no concern. I have a fair amount of silver. Short term, they can, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Federal Reserve Bank, you know, so on and so forth. If they wanted to drop it to $6 an ounce tomorrow morning, they could do it. If they wanted to jump it to $60, they could do it. As long as the amount of silver is finite. And by the way, there's 5 times as much gold in the world as there is silver. Most people think it's just the opposite. And the amount of gold is still being discovered. Silver, because of a certain alloy in it, rises to the surface. So almost all silver has been discovered. It all hasn't been mined, but most of it's been discovered. 90% of the silver that was above ground in 1990 is lost. It's at the bottom of trash dumps and so forth. Most silver in use, and by the way, silver is the most used metal. It's not in quantity. In quantity is steel, of course, for buildings and like, but silver is the most used metal. And you take new technologies coming along, including electric cars. The special battery that is required for these new electric cars we're talking about takes a minute amount of silver. Photoelectric cells take a minute amount of silver. Well, you add all that up, and right now, last year, we mined about 700 million ounces of silver, and it keeps dropping because they're just not finding more. And at some point in time, J.P. Morgan can manipulate only once by doing paper silver, basically shorting silver and, you know, just selling paper. But you will get to the point, it may not be this year, it may not be next year, but at some point when you cannot make a computer out of paper silver. You've got to have the silver. So at some point, I don't know when, we'll be running out of silver, and that's when, you know, blank hits the fan, bad things happen. And J.P. Morgan, the smart people that they are, will be long gone by then. They will have gone long, and they'll be all prepared to have silver go to $300 an ounce or whatever. And there's also the ingredient that there's so little silver in the world, you know, just a minute amount in comparison to gold, that there's a let's see, Brother John F., I believe is his YouTube name, has an excellent video up, explains it far better than, you know, it's just bang. I said, wow, that really explains it, why billionaires can't jump into the silver market. The silver market is so small, half the billionaires in the world have enough money, they could buy every bit of silver that exists above ground and below ground, but they don't do it because it would totally wreck the economic system of the world, the United States. The dollar would crash. You know, the world would be in a heck of a mess. And supposedly, like Warren Buffett bought a huge amount of silver in the late 90s and was given a talking to, and immediately turned around and sold the silver, supposedly at a loss, which Warren Buffett is not used to doing that. Those, you know, anything's a gamble. Anything's a gamble. So buying stock, buying silver, buying gold, buying anything, all I do is I look at it as an engineer. I add up the amount of silver that is above ground, that's below ground. I look at what's going to be used and needed in the next 10 years in all these new inventions, and say, you know, the numbers just don't add up. There is no substitute for silver. Silver is the lowest conductivity. Copper is number 2 at ×2 in resistance. Gold is number 4. So there are many applications where you have to have silver. You cannot substitute anything else. Any place that you could substitute another metal, they've already done it.
Let me ask you this. I've heard a lot of what you're saying, and I agree totally. There is a finite amount of it, and it's being consumed, whereas all the gold that was ever dug out of the ground, minus a little bit, is still around today. What about nationalization or the confiscation of gold? What do you think about that? Do you think they'd be able to do it? And if they did outlaw gold, so to speak, the way FDR did back when, would there then be an underground for it, and would it still be good to hold silver physically?
I have no idea. There's a lot of people that have said, "Gee, I had a boating accident last week. I had all my silver on my boat, and my boat sank." Isn't that odd? You know, stories like that. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Well,
I'd much rather have silver. The last thing you do, by the way, is to put silver or any valuable in a safety deposit box in the bank, because banking laws are that if there's anything goes on at all, local emergency, whatever, banks are required to lock the front door, close the close the vault, and the federal government can come in and go through all the safety deposit boxes and confiscate anything they want. Currently, the country, because of the H1N1 virus, which I think was a ruse, it put us into a state of emergency, which, by the way, has never been lifted. It should have been, but it hasn't. No one's ever said anything about it. So because of that, President Obama can, just by saying, or signing on the dotted line, he's already got the votes from Congress because of the H1N1, he can declare martial law just by saying, we're under martial law. He needs no reason at all. And with doing that, they can go into all banks, and they can go anywhere they want. They come in your home. They can do anything they want. They can basically take anything. They can arrest you. They can basically the Constitution, Bill of Rights, so forth, they're all suspended.
Yeah, well, they certainly have the people captive. It's interesting that in other countries, people aren't as sheepish. Maybe it's just going to take a lot more before people start to wise up. What do you think about the presence of FEMA camps and the preparations that the government is doing under the auspices, if you will, of preparing for national emergencies? I mean, anything that even, let's just say that the FEMA camps were there, and they were there because if people were dislocated because of a Katrina, they'd have housing. Those could easily be turned into whatever they wanted. Do you have any opinions about FEMA camps?
I look at all that. I've never, got in my car and gone to look at one. It seems like there's maybe somewhere between 15 and 20 ones that are significant. They seem to all be tied with, are tied to Air Force, Army bases like, Tinker down in Oklahoma, things like that, where when you look at everything, and it used to be Google Maps, you could look at it, and, Google Maps gets you down to, I mean, you can see the faces of people, but these FEMA camps are now all blurred out. You go to those spots, and there used to be a website that had the coordinates that you just clicked on them, and bam, you went right to that. You went right to that FEMA camp. You go to that now, and it's just a blur. So back when they did have pictures up, and there are many YouTube videos that do have the pictures, you see the double barbed wire fences that with razor wire on the top, and it's all pointed inward to basically keep people in. Now, the explanations they give is they say, well, if there's ever basically a breakdown in Mexico where we have millions of people streaming in the United States, we need somewhere to put them and somewhere to keep them in, and that's what that's for. That was one of the explanations they gave. So the answer is, I don't know. We're gonna, there's a, as I told somebody this morning, there's a big it coming. Well, what's it? Well, go back to the first question. What is it?
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't much matter after a fashion what it is. You're going to have to survive it, and you're pretty much going to have to operate without much help from the government. Let me ask you this: one of your chapters is entitled "Be a Stealth Survivalist." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I should probably spend about a minute or so basically explaining how the book is set up, because it's going to help people as they read through it. By the way, once it turns into a Kindle book, it's already been accepted by Amazon for Kindle, and I'm looking for a better publisher right now. That's the delay. That's the reason it's still up for free. I'm looking for a better publisher. If anyone has any ideas, let me know. Anyway. Several years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, I really got into this, and knowing a lot that most people don't know, I started buying survivalism books, and of the ones that I bought, oh gosh, close to 30 I bet, and I found probably half of them weren't really even survivalism books. They were books that are on like home canning, making your own clothes, things that it was obvious to me that the publisher took a look at it and said, this is not going to sell. We don't need another book on making our own clothes. What we'll do is add about 30 pages on survivalism, and we'll change the title, and we'll sell it that way. And that's what they did. Those books are essentially worthless, as far as I'm concerned, and unless you want to make your own clothes. And then there's 5, 6, 7 books written by individuals who are almost always ex-Army Rangers, ex-Navy SEALs, people like Jesse Ventura, that you can put him out in the woods with a pocket knife, and 5 years later he comes out, wearing a coonskin cap, and he's built himself a 3-story log cabin, and he's just living the good life. There aren't many people in the world like this. My feeling was 99% of the world are people like, or at least the United States, are people like me that just an everyday individual. I can pitch a tent, but I pretty much need instructions to do it. And things like, what do you do about food and water, and how do you survive, and guns, and so on and so forth. I could not find anything. The closest thing I found was there's an individual, you probably know him, Bob Rawls, Rawles. He has a book called Surviving the End of the World as We Know It. Excellent book to get.
Yeah, I've read that. That's it's his follow-up to The Patriots, and it's more of a reference material. A really good book on practical ways to survive.
Yeah, in fact, in my book, I recommend people buy that as a follow-on to my book, because my book, I say it takes you out about 6 to 9 months. If the world is in such bad shape that it's still in total disaster after 9 months, quite frankly, I'm old enough, I don't want to be here. But if the world is going to be in a heck of a mess for 6 months, and then slowly put itself back together again, and law enforcement comes, and we're back and running again, I want to be one of those survivors. There's right now 95% of the people in the United States, if we had a major disaster, major problem, would not be a survivor. There's no reason at all why 95% can't be survivors, unless you're at ground zero. Call it ground zero. Hate to use that word, connotation of 9/11, but if you're right in the middle of it, and a nuke drops down your chimney, there's nothing you can do. You are toast. But if you know the basics of human nature, that's what I did. I followed human nature. I'm now retired, but the businesses that I owned and ran very much followed human nature, and I went through everything. And like, for instance, I set 3 or 4 rules: buying of all of the things you need, food, water, so forth. They had 95% of it, at least 95%, had to come from the equivalent of Super Walmart. And before people write you letters about, buy USA, well, yeah, I did as much as I could buy from stores that are not China Mart. But the way things are today, you may not have time. There's a list in the book of things to buy, things that you must have, things that are nice to have, so forth. And so essentially I wrote the book for myself, and then had so many people look at it and say, would you make me a copy that I'd like to have it? Next thing you know, it's turned into a book. I've got, an ISBN number. I've got copyright, trademark, infinitedangers.com. I own that. It's kind of taken on a life of its own. And if you go through it all, there's 30 chapters, and you mentioned one particular chapter, stealth survivalist, right?
Yes, that was it.
That's a very critical one, because many people, and I don't know if you have advertisers on your show or not, but if you do, I hope you don't get anybody mad, because there are times when things like the Berkey water generator and frozen foods, mountain foods, things like that. There's a need for those. If the danger, if the problem is not that severe, but if it's an Armageddon type of thing, what you need to do in your area of safety, and I abbreviate everything. I call it an SA for being a safe area. That in that area you've got everything you need to survive for at least 6 months. Food, water, everything from sleeping bags to I've got probably 5,000-6,000 pounds of different products. The one thing I don't have is large quantities of bulk food. Problem with that is when you start to cook things, it emits smells, it emits smoke, and you can also have light. And just picture a situation where you've really got Armageddon, and there's people out there starving, and it's been 3 weeks. Let's say it's 3 weeks down the line, and people are starving to death, and people are forming into mobs. Many of them with guns, and they hear. Let's say they hear the noise of a generator that somebody has started up, and they say, "Oh, there's life there somewhere." Surely they would spare me a little bit of food just for my family. Well, the problem is there's about 10,000 other people also hearing that sound, and they all run toward the sound. The next thing you know is, you're sharing a little bit of food with the first few people that show up, and after that you see 10,000 people heading over the hill, all for you, and within 5 minutes your place is totally gutted, and you and your family are dead, and those provisions that were going to last you 6 months are all gone. You would think that the thing to do would be to go to your local police department and say, I've got a radio that was protected, and that's listed in the book how to do that, a galvanized steel tri-scan of all crazy things, that you go to the police department, and what they would do is say, thank you very much, we've been ordered by FEMA to confiscate all product, anything that's usable for the greater good, which means that everything that you've set aside for yourself for the next 6 months goes to a high school gymnasium and feeds a group of 1,000 people for one night. And then after that, you proceed to starve to death along with the other 1,000 people. So stealth means no smoke, no noise, no light, no anything. The more hidden you can be, the better. And,
let me ask you this too. Being a ham radio operator and knowing a lot of the theory that's required, electronic theory, and plus your background as an engineer, communication. My brother and I want to get single sideband CB radios so that we can communicate a little bit of a distance. I don't have a ham radio operator license. My brother actually does. He got it many years ago. I think he's a general class radio telephone license. I'm not a ham. I guess I could get one, and if we had a total collapse, I guess who's going to stop me from using it? But what's your opinion about different types of communication, whether it be a ham rig or a single sideband? Do you have any thoughts on that?